In America, there's supposed to be a law that says workers who want to have a voice in their workplace should be able to form a union.
The people wanted the union there. We've had it there all these years, and yet they did this campaign against us, and it was terrible.
There's supposed to be a law that says workers who want to organize can't be fired or harassed or discriminated against.
I have been followed on my day off to restaurants by security guards with walkie-talkies.
There's supposed to be a law that says all workers should have the chance to make free and informed decisions about their workplace.
And they said the only right we had was to go out the door.
There's supposed to be a law, but the law is not working. Currently in Washington, a special presidential panel, the Dunlop Commission, is meeting to decide what changes are needed in our labor laws to bring about a new American workplace. On June 2nd, 1994, the Commission issued its first report. That report finds that America's working families face an uncertain future. We're working harder than ever, but our standard of living is declining. As the Commission states, a healthy society cannot long continue along the path the U.S. is moving. The Commission report highlights workplaces in which labor and management have formed partnerships to create the kinds of jobs, workplaces, and businesses that America needs.
We operate under some real unique premises. We sit down and talk about issues and try to settle things at the lowest possible level. Nothing is a sacred cow, so to say. We deal with issues every day that we consider cutting edge.
But the Commission report also spotlights the growing dark side of labor relations. The Commission finds that 25% of all employers illegally fire a worker for supporting a union. Many more employers harass and intimidate workers for exercising what are supposed to be their legal rights.
I cannot impress upon you what an organizer, what an employee who is just fighting for their rights in a campaign goes through in this day and age. I had an employee, a management person assigned to work with me 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, who was told he was there solely to work on me, to change my ideas about unions. I was timed going to the bathroom. I could go nowhere in my workplace without being followed. It's a disgrace. It's harassment beyond what I could ever tell you. Unless you have lived through it, you couldn't know what it feels like.
During the first campaign, people were really for the union until the company stepped in. They started scaring everybody, and they fired me and my husband. Well, at the time they fired us, my daughter was pregnant. She was having a lot of kidney problems, and they depended on us a lot. And after we were fired, we just couldn't do much for her. After we were reinstated at Manette's, we thought everything would be better because the courts were behind us. It was worse. They harassed us from the day we started back. They kept us in the office all the time. If another employee done something wrong, they took us to the office for it.
I was not allowed off of my little section that I worked in. When I'd go to the bathroom, the supervisor would follow me. Anywhere as I went, I was being followed.
Not only are some union members harassed in their own workplace, they are frequently blacklisted if they try to find another job.
Jewish Hospital hired us for the transitional care unit. The critical care supervisor called us and arranged for us to attend the critical care classes. We had our physicals, TB skin tests, chest x-rays, and other lab tests. We were told to report to work on TCU at Jewish on September the 25th.
I was present in the office of the Human Resource Director of Audubon Hospital when he received a call from the Human Resource Director of Jewish Hospital about Kara and her friend.
On September 20th, we each received by UPS next day air at our homes the following letter from Jewish Hospital. quote, "We regret to inform you that we have no position of employment for you."
The conversation I overheard was directed at the fact that both nurses were considered to be union red hots, very active in the Audubon campaign, extremely pro-union individuals. The Audubon Human Resources Director went so far as to say, "You probably don't want them working for you."
We knew that we had been blacklisted.
Today, billions of dollars that could be spent to retrain workers or create new American jobs is instead being paid to consultants who advise companies on how to stop their workers from exercising their right to join a union.
And one of the most interesting ones that we're aware of occurred in a session in Washington, D.C., where one of the union busters attempted to explain to employers what their potential problems would be in organizing as related to the National Labor Relations Act. He drew a large circle on a flip chart. He said, imagine that everything that can happen in an organizing drive is within this circle. He then drew a very small circle, very tiny circle inside the larger circle and said, this circle represents everything that is illegal. He then drew an X through that circle and said, and don't worry about that because there's no penalty for violating it anyway.
Employers and their union-busting consultants can force employees to attend meeting after meeting. They use this access to scare their workers, to make false statements about unions, or to make sure workers hear only one side of the story.
And what they did during the last 6 days prior to the vote on union representation was walk people through a simulation of the hospital shutting down. The hospital conducted 347 simulated layoff meetings with nurses who had less seniority. They had a seniority date, and every nurse under that date had to go in for a one-on-one meeting with their supervisor and fill out unemployment forms and go through what it would be a layoff meeting. It was pretty clear that what environment they were trying to create was that the choice was no longer union or no union, collective bargaining or no collective bargaining. The choice was a job or no job.
If, against all the odds, the union wins an election, employers can and do string out the bargaining process until workers have no choice but to give up. In fact, in 4 out of 10 cases where workers vote for a union, employees are not able to negotiate a single contract because of employer hostility.
It took a year for certification. We finally got certified. After the certification, he wouldn't even bargain with us. He didn't even want to talk to us. If we can't even get a first contract, we're in big trouble. Very big trouble. And our union's been waiting for over 18 months to get us a first contract, and we still can't get it. And this guy does not want to give in. So we have to have some outside help somewhere.
The American workplace is changing. There are now 25 million part-time, temporary, or contract employees in today's workforce. For these workers, forming a union is nearly impossible because their employer is likely to change from one day to the next. Sometimes these employees are not even sure who their employer really is.
The employer says, we're not the employer. It's true their supervisor works for our administrator. It's true that the supervisor of the housekeeper supervises other people in the house. But we have another entity called Confidence Management Systems, which is really their employer. Meanwhile, these workers and 9 others are out of work.
America needs unions. Working families depend on the good jobs and benefits that unions help secure. And the difficulty that today's workers face in organizing affects us all. Currently in America, there are 14 million full-time workers who earn a salary below the poverty level. Minorities and women are particularly at risk. In fact, 1 out of every 4 female workers in this country earns full-time wages below the poverty level.
Studies unequivocally demonstrate that union membership or coverage under a collective bargaining agreement increases women's wages and reduces the wage gap, especially for low-income women and women of color.
As the number of middle-class jobs shrinks, too many people find themselves working longer and harder, working 2 or 3 jobs just to stay even.
I'd like to end by passing on a comment directed towards this commission by an assembly worker I know when I told her I'd be coming here today. And what she says is this: before they decide to export Silicon Valley to Sheboygan, tell them not everyone who works here gets to drive a Porsche. And that's not what we're asking for. But in one of the country's greatest centers of wealth and innovation, surely a hardworking person should at least be able to afford the bus.
America needs the talents and abilities of all its workers to compete in a global marketplace. We need to form new partnerships to give workers a voice in decision-making and a fair share of the rewards of their work. It can happen, but not when management violates basic worker rights.
The time has come to call anti-unionism what it is, an attack on working people and their freedom, no less than racism or sexism. Anti-unionism erodes the fabric of our national life.
The Dunlop Commission's recommendations will be issued this fall. Next year, when those recommendations are turned into a legislative proposal, we're going to have one chance to make sure that America's workers have the same right that workers in every other industrialized country in the world have: the right to form a union.
The laws have got to be enforced. They've got to be changed. They've got to protect people, the workers out there.
The system has to come out and do something, because we're all stuck here.
To me, I felt like, the law was protecting us, but the company showed us the law didn't protect us. It protected them.
The law that's supposed to protect workers from harassment and intimidation is clearly not working. This is our chance to make a difference. If you want to be part of the campaign for a labor law that works for all American workers, call this number today. There's supposed to be a law. Together, we can make it work.